Hey there, and welcome to the Parallax Headshot Part 4. In this section, we're going to be creating the heads-up display, and we're going to be transferring it onto our subject, as well as starting to create some of the other graphics that make this look like it's in outer space. Alright, well, let's go ahead and take a look at our document we opened in the last section here. We have our own heads-up display, and then we have our HUD1. So we're just going to, we did create our own, but I'm just going to use the ones that we pre-made before this tutorial. So HUD 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to just hold down Controller Command, and we're going to click on all of those layers, and we're going to click and drag them over to our other document. There we go, and we can see they all show up right here. Alright, let's go ahead and make them all visible. I'm going to hit Controller Command G to group them together. Alright, and we'll just call this HUD, Heads Up Display. Alright, there we go. So now you know how to make them, and now we're going to start placing them and make them look like they're actually interacting with our subject. So let's go ahead and close out this group here. Just Command W will close that out. And we're going to start off going right over our subject's eyeball. Alright, let's go ahead and open this up and take a look at the heads-up display we're going to start using. Alright, so we're going to start off with HUD 4, bringing that right around his eye. So the first thing I want to do is give this a little bit of color. Right now it's black, and we want it to look like it's glowing around his eye. So I'm going to hit Controller Command U, which brings up my hue saturation. You can also go to Image, Adjustments, and then down to Hue Saturation. Okay, now I'm going to bring my saturation up, but that's not going to do anything because it's black right now. So I have to bring my lightness up as well. So we'll bring our lightness up, we'll bring our saturation up, and then we'll click on this colorize. Oh, should have clicked on that colorize first. So let's bring our saturation up, and then I'll bring my lightness up a little bit. There we go. And bringing our saturation up, we'll start to get some color into what was just black, which is pretty cool. Alright, and now we can choose our hue anything we want. We're going to choose something right about there. Keep in mind this can change at any point in time. All I have to do is hit Controller Command U and change these values once again. Alright, let's hit OK there. Looking good. Now the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and convert this to a smart object, because we want to use several different copies of this layer. So we're going to right click here on HUD 4, and we're going to go down to Convert to a Smart Object. Now the reason this is nice is, let's say I decide to make this really small. I'm going to hit Command T, and I'm going to make this really, really small, and hit Enter. Now, normally, if I were to make this bigger again, you would lose a lot of information. Okay? It would basically, well, I'll just show you on a different version here. So, Command T will make this really small. Okay? And then I'll make it back big again and hit Enter, and you see how pixelated it looks, right? That's because when you make it small, it loses a lot of the information, and you try to make it bigger again, you don't have a lot of information left. Alright, let's hit undo, and now look at this HUD 4. Because I converted this to a smart object first, if I make this bigger again, it contains all of the original information. And the reason is, when you make a smart object, it actually creates like a reference file for this layer, and then basically this layer is just referencing that file. So you can make copies of it, you can blur it, you can do all kinds of things, and they're all going to be referenced, and you don't lose information from your original. Alright, cool. Well, this looks really good. We're going to start off with this guy. We're going to make this just a little bit smaller. There we go. And now we're going to group this with itself. So here in our heads-up display, we've got a lot of things that are going to go on our heads-up display. We're going to double-click, and we're just going to call this eye piece 1. There we go. Alright, so that's our heads-up display. I'm going to change our blend mode from normal. We're going to go down to vivid light. Alright, there we go. Alright, cool. Overlay, soft light, and alright, vivid light. You know what? Let's stick with overlay for right now. That looks pretty good. Alright, so now we're going to do a couple of copies of this. I'm going to hit Controller Command J to duplicate that, and this time I'm going to add a blur to this layer. Now it's really important that we add a blur. Whenever we're working with stuff like this where we want it to look like a little bit more realistic, we definitely want to give it like a little bit of glow. Alright, so we're going to go to filter, down here to blur, and to Gaussian blur. Now the other great thing about a smart object is that you can change your blur at any point in time. Alright, so there we go. That looks pretty good. Now let's go through our different blending modes. We have vivid light, we have hard light. Let's change our color here with vivid light. I'm going to click on this layer, and we're going to hit Controller Command U, and now we can change our saturation, and we can change our lightness. There we go. To give us a couple of different looks. And we can even change our hue. Alright. There we go. Now we're looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and close that down. Alright. And I'm going to just make this a little bit larger. Alright. Cool. You know what? I'm not sure that I like hard light. Let's go back to overlay. I like that a little bit better. Okay. Now this HUD, this heads up display, we're going to go ahead and center it around the eye. I'm going to hit Command J to duplicate it. And we're going to make another one that is really, really small and visible inside of the eye. There we go. So basically I'm just taking the same shape and giving us different options here. Alright, now if you want to cycle through your layer blend modes quickly, just hit your V key and then hit Shift and then plus and minus, which is going to scroll through your different blend modes. So sometimes it can be like, yeah, I don't know what the right blend mode is or whatever. You can basically just scroll through them really, really quickly, and then you'll have a good idea of what actually looks good. Alright, here we go. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to put a layer mask on there. We're going to hit B for our brush tool, and I'm going to paint black right over top of that eyelid. And let's hit Command J to duplicate that and just offset it a little bit. Alright, so it looks like we've got some like actual eye control heads up display in the actual eye, which is cool. Alright, let's hit Command J again, and this time I want to put it over here on the other eye. And on this layer mask, we're going to paint black right over here. There we go. And paint white where we should see it. Alright, and again, Command J to duplicate that and just move it over a little bit. Alright, cool. So here we can see we're off to a really good start. And every one of these things we can turn off and turn on if we decide we want the layers to stay there, or if we would decide we want them to be a little bit less visible, and we can work on changing our blending modes. So I'm going to hit V and then hit Shift and scroll through them again. Alright, cool. Yeah, I think overlay works the best there. I'm going to hit Command J to duplicate that, and then let's go ahead and rotate it around. Alright, and let's go ahead and make that a little bit larger as well. Very cool. And I'm going to give this guy a little bit of a blur as well. So again, these effects are they really come in nice when you use them in tandem with each other. So just having like one of these layers isn't going to do like a whole lot. Having multiple different layers that you can use to create your effects is just going to, like, each layer you use is going to kind of add to the effect. Alright, there we go. Let's just turn some of these off and on just to see how we're looking. Cool, that looks pretty good there. Alright, now on a new layer right above there, I'm just going to grab my brush tool, B for the brush tool. Let's use a regular soft edge brush, and then I'm just going to just choose any color. Let's grab our color picker, choose a nice, let's say light green here. And I'm just going to paint right around the eye. There we go, something like that. Now, with this layer, I'm going to change my blending mode down to something like color dodge, which is going to make it a little bit brighter. Alright, so you can see color dodge anywhere else. That's all it does. Now we're going to hit Controller Command U for our hue saturation, and we can try playing around with our lightness as well, our saturation, and our hue. So you can see we can do quite a bit even after we've created our different elements. Alright, that looks pretty good. Let's bring our saturation down a little bit more and hit OK. Alright, again, my goal here is just to make it look like we do have a really nice blur around our subject. Alright, around our first eyepiece. Cool. Yeah, I like that quite a bit. Alright guys, so that's our first eyepiece. Now the next eyepiece we're going to be bringing in is this guy right here. So this is going to be like the target radar, whatever you have. Whatever have ya. Alright. Now with this layer, we're going to go ahead and hit Controller Command U to bring up our hue saturation. Let's click on Colorize, and then I want to bring my lightness up, our saturation, and this is going to get more of a yellow color. Alright, there we go. Very nice. Let's hit Command T, make this a little bit smaller. We want it to be centered there on our eye. And you know what? This eyepiece here, I don't think we're exactly centered on the eye with this one here. So let's go ahead and just make sure we are centered. That way this little gauge lines up with the other one. Alright. Cool, looking good. Alright, so this layer here, let's go ahead and group that with itself. We'll just call this eyepiece 2. Okay, cool. And then now we're going to flip through the blending modes as well with this. Same like we did the last time. Alright. And with this, again, these effects, they're totally, you know, like they're we're creating space effects, right? So like depending on what you actually want out of these effects, you can definitely choose different blending modes to get your different effects. This is not something where like it has to look one way or another. Alright, let's hit Command J to duplicate that, and now I'm going to add a little bit of a blur to this guy, which is just going to help it give a little bit more. The blur just helps give it a little bit more reality, especially given the fact that it's supposed to be like a heads-up display. Alright, you know what? I'm going to hit Command J again to duplicate that layer one more time, and we're going to do even bigger blur now. Alright, that's looking good. Now I'm going to flip through my blend modes. Okay, linear light looks pretty good. And oftentimes I'll do this just to see what I get. You know, sometimes you don't know what it's going to look like, right? Sometimes it's just like, oh, actually that looks really good. Alright, obviously now we're making a tutorial, so I've already made this image and I already know that I like it. But when I was making it the first time, I had no idea. Like none of this was done already. This was all just like happening for the very first time. So this is basically how it's done. This is like what you have to do to play around with this sort of thing. To create this sort of thing. It's just kind of like, yeah, basically just play around. Alright. Cool. That looks awesome. And again, we can go in here and change any of these things at any point in time. Now, I'm also going to create a new layer inside of here. Alright, and try to create, again, a little bit of a glow of my own. There we go. Now, I'm painting with the brush tool, just green at this point. I'm going to flip through my blending mode, so V on my keyboard, and then hit Shift and plus and minus is going to flip through my blend modes again. Alright. Basically, we're using the go until you like something method. Alright, that looks pretty good, the color method. However, it's a little bit, well, it's green. We want it to be yellow. So we're going to hit Controller Command U, and we're going to bring our hue off to the left there. Alright. Alright, yellow/orange. Alright, cool. And we'll just lower our opacity just a little bit. So basically we want these to look like they're actually like coloring the skin around our subject. Alright, cool. That's off to a really nice start. Alright, let's go ahead and close that up. Bring that down, and then we have a few more of these heads-up displays. We're going to save these guys for later. Actually, these two I don't think we'll wind up using, but this guy we'll save for later. Alright, so let's go ahead and group those together. Pretty cool. So already we have this really nice heads-up display, and you guys can see after you created the shapes, it really doesn't take too long to like actually get them in place and make them look like they are actually affecting the image. Okay, cool. Now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to add our glow that exists here on the right side of our helmet here. Okay, so let's create a new layer. I'm going to group that with itself, and we're going to call this glow. Alright, now basically I need to create a shape. Let's just grab a brush tool so I can kind of show you what I'm doing here. I just need to create a shape that looks like this. It kind of comes around there. There we go. And is a nice like glow. But just using my brush tool, obviously you can tell like that looks horrible, right? It looks like a kindergartner did that. So we need a tool that's going to give us a lot more control over our shape. And that's why we're going to use the pen tool. Alright, so P for the pen tool. There we go. And basically what I want to do is just right inside of the helmet make curves that basically mirror what's going on here in the helmet. So I'm going to start right up here. Let's go ahead and click up there. And then we're going to click right down here. And then the basic rule with the pen tool is you want to create as long of a line as possible. So if you have a curve that like one smooth curve from here to there, it doesn't make sense to click a whole bunch of times within that. It makes sense, you want to create one point up here and then one point down here. And then we'll handle this curve with a separate point and then the rest of it with another point. So really we should just have a couple of clicks to get this where we want it. Okay, cool. Now let's hit Control or Command. I'm going to click on this anchor point, and this is where I can move my curve after I've made it. And in this case we're just going to move it right to about there. Alright. Now our next point, we're going to click there, drag it out in that direction. Alright, and click right here and drag this down in that direction. Control or Command will bring up our direct selection, which is this little white arrow. Alright, and we can bring it down there. Cool. And now I'm going to click off of it just to kind of like see if this is looking pretty good. Like I just want to see like, okay, is this what we're going for here? Is the distance from the helmet pretty much the same throughout? Let's bring it a little bit farther up here. Does the curve in fact look similar to the curve that is in the helmet? Because again, we're just doing this with the pen tool, right? So it's up to us to make it look like it belongs. Alright, cool. Well, I think it looks pretty good. Okay, so let's go ahead and click back on the curve. We're going to click on our endpoint to continue along with our curve. And then I'm just going to go right up here and close that off. Okay, all that I really care about is this line here. Right, that's all that really matters. All this stuff up here is not really going to make it into the final, so I don't really care that much about it right now. Okay. Well, we're going to right click here, and I'm going to go down to Make Selection, Feather by 0.3 pixels, and hit OK. Alright, now let's go ahead and choose a nice foreground color here, something like this nice turquoise there. Hit Shift Delete and fill this with our foreground color, which is that color right there. Pretty cool. Alright guys, now what we're going to do basically is just grab our marquee selection tool. I want to move this selection and then delete a part out of it. So marquee selection tool, inside of my selection here you can just click anywhere inside your selection and you can move it around. So just like this, really easy. There we go. I'm able to make that shape, and then I'm just going to hit the delete key. and it's going to delete it from that layer, which is perfect. Alright, now I can use my move tool and decide, where exactly do we want this like nice glowy thing to exist. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now if it's not perfect, you can see in this case this top needs to be a little bit more to the right. I'm going to hold the control or command key and just move the top a little bit more. Alright, and this is going to get faded out a little bit towards the end. So, alright, there we go. That looks really cool. Now it's time to start playing around with this and making a couple duplicates of it and changing how this looks. Alright, first we're going to start off with our layer blending mode. So I'm going to hit V for my move tool, then hold down the shift key and click on the plus and minus. So as I hit the plus key, basically it's just flipping through our blending modes. Alright, cool, that looks pretty nice. Vivid light gives us like a really nice glow and a pretty unique effect right down here as well. Alright, perfect for a futuristic space helmet like this one. Okay, now what we're going to do is make a couple duplicates of this, because I do want it to make it look like it's actually glowing. So let's hit Command J to duplicate that, and then we're going to go to Filter, Blur, and Gaussian Blur. There we go. Let's give it one small blur like that. Okay, looking good. And then I'm going to hit Command J again to duplicate that again and bring up another Gaussian blur, and this time we'll go a little bit larger with it. Alright, there we go. And we can see that each time I do this, it just adds a little bit more reality to it, just a little bit more to the effect like that. Yeah, it pretty much just looks like something in Photoshop. This is starting to look like something that's, still definitely just in Photoshop, but it has a little bit more depth to it, which is really, really nice. Alright, now we're going to create a new layer on top of that, and then with the same color, I'm going to hit Alt or Option to grab this color here. Okay, we're going to add some of this glow to the face of our subject. So I'm just going to paint right here over top of our subject's face and change our layer blend mode to overlay. Alright, and this is just going to allow some of the color, there we go, and some of the light from our helmet glow to get onto our subject's face, which is, after all, what makes it look real. Alright, let's do another layer. Change this one to overlay as well. And we'll just do the same thing. A little bit more. Cool. And I love this stuff because it's just like, it's totally just play around time. Like, there's no rules here, right? Like, we're just creating like space helmet glows. Like, there's no right, there's no wrong. It's just, whatever you feel looks good. Alright, I think that looks great so far. So the next thing we're going to do is just kind of fade it out just a bit. And you know what? This guy down here I think could use a little bit of a blur. So let's go to our blur, and just a little bit I think helps it out so it doesn't look like so Photoshoppy. Alright, there's the before and the after with just that little blur. That's it. Okay. Alright, now here on the glow we're just going to put a layer mask on here. We're going to put a layer mask, and then with a large soft edge black brush I'm just going to layer mask it out from the top and from the bottom a little bit to make it look like it kind of fades into nothing. Alright, cool, that's looking really good. Alright, now I want to add some detail to the back side of our mask, and we can do that in a couple ways. I was thinking, let's see, we're going to try with this guy maybe. I was thinking I would just create some circles on my own, but we might go ahead and try with this. Alright, this layer, let's hit Control or Command U. I'm going to hit this colorize button, and we're going to bring our lightness way up here, and we'll bring our saturation up as well. Okay, now let's hit Control or Command T, and I'm just going to kind of warp this up in that direction, Alright, and bring it in there. Very nice. Now let's flip through our blending modes, hit V, and then again hold down the shift and click on the plus and minus to get through your blending modes. Alright, that actually looks really cool. So let's put a layer mask on this layer, hit B for our brush tool, and then we're going to paint black right over top of his face. And this is just going to help it look like this effect is like behind the mask, like on the other side of the glass. Alright, looking good. And let's just rotate that around just a little bit more. Cool, looking good. Now we'll do one more here just to see. We'll grab our marquee selection tool, make selection just like that, shift delete to fill that with our foreground color. Alright, and then I'm going to right click in here and we're going to go to transform selection, and I'm going to go ahead and scale that down a little bit. Alright, we'll hit enter and then the delete key. Alright, so we have a cool shape like that that's going to kind of mimic what's going on back there. And then again, we're going to flip through our blending modes just to kind of get the most out of it that we can. Alright, that looks cool too. So let's put a layer mask on there. B for the brush tool. And now we're going to paint black over top of our subject's face. Alright, very cool. And we're just going to lower the opacity quite a bit. Alright, cool. Zoom out, and then, yeah, you know what? Maybe that could be rotated. Just trying to figure out exactly how it could look the best. Alright. Cool. Yeah, I think I like it up there. I think I like it up there. And you know what? We can shrink it down a little bit too. Actually, I liked it. This is all arbitrary. Obviously, it doesn't... there is no right or wrong when you're creating something like this. So it's just totally taste and like composition and, you know, what you want your image to look like, basically. Alright. Cool. Let's go ahead and zoom in there. And then we'll paint black on our layer mask. And again, we're doing this like I would say pretty quickly. I mean, when I did this the first go round, definitely spent a lot of time like figuring out exactly what I wanted all these things to look like and their placement and everything like that. And this go round, it's much more just like doing it again. So if you guys are doing this sort of thing, like a creative endeavor like this, and you feel like it's taking a while, don't feel like you're alone, because the first go round that I did this, it did take quite a while as well. So yeah, there's no problem in taking your time and getting something how you want it. Alright, cool. That looks really, really good. Alright guys, well, that is the end of this section. We did quite a bit so far. Now our next section is going to be really cool. We're going to be creating a glowing laser array around our subject. So we did everything, all of this heads-up display, all that in this one section, really bringing the image together.